Ready when you are, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I would like to call to order Mayor Commission work session. Today is September 14th, and the time is 10 a.m. A slight modification to the agenda. We're going to push item number 2 to the 28th workshop. Mr. Green had a loss in his family and is tending to those matters. And so we will move item 2 to the September 28th work session. So we'll begin with item 1, community engagement during COVID-19. Commissioner Lambert, do you want to tee this off, and then I'll get staff to begin the presentation?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. And thank you for calendaring this item. It's definitely something that is near and dear to my heart, as I know is important to the entire commission, to administration, and to our residents here. I'll be brief and just saying that I think we all hear the community saying that they want more transparency with the projects that are moving forward. And, we hear residents saying they didn't get information. At the same time, we often hear staff saying that they've had a number of meetings on those presentations or on those projects. And so just wanting to kind of level set on what it is that our steps are for community engagement. If we could build some kind of consensus on the steps that we're going to take for that engagement so that ultimately we can create reliability and consistency for our residents and for the stakeholders in the community. Ideally, I'd love to see if there is one place that people can go to gather information. We have a number of different projects, whether it's public works, capital improvement, engineering, road projects, and I think that we have the website, but not maybe one place where people can go to, or some level of consistency where they want to see what's going on in the community, what meetings are coming up, and I just would like to be available for folks to know where to go for that. So, and I understand that the community outreach has now changed in some way over the past few months, and of course not to neglect the changes that we've all had with COVID, and hoping that one day we'll go back to the way things were as far as community events. But in the meantime, looking at how are we going to elicit and solicit the community's input.
Thank you, Commissioner. One of the first things I did when after my election is I charged my staff to come up with a more comprehensive and consistent approach to community engagement. In my view, it had been too haphazard in the past. And so I'm going to allow to turn it over to Jennifer Ferriero, and she could talk about the steps that we've taken thus far. And we're not where I want to be yet, but we're at least making progress. Jennifer?
Yes, good morning, Mayor, City Commissioners, City Administration. I believe Armando wanted to make some points before we started. Is that correct, Armando?
Okay. Mr. Fana, my apologies.
No, that's okay, and thank you, Mayor. And Commissioner Lambert brought up a lot of them, and that is that we've had some. We started out in this process about 6 months ago. We actually had a Mayor Commissioner workshop about 6 months ago that was pretty extensive in terms of explaining some of the challenges with community engagement that are being faced throughout the country. And this was pre-COVID. Post-COVID, it certainly has gotten even more challenging. But I think we've learned a lot of great things over the last few months. There's the silver lining being that we can use technology a lot more extensively than maybe we thought previously. And so I think this presents us with a challenge as well as an opportunity to utilize not just the traditional forms of engagement, but also utilizing technology. And Jennifer's team is now taken that over, the process of community engagement, working with engineering and the other departments. And so I think you're going to see some progress. But like everything, it will be a work in progress. It's been a work in progress for the last 6 months, and we'll keep evolving as things go through. But I wanted to echo the commissioner's comments on just having a consistency and just a go-to place for the city. I think if we get a go-to place for the citizens and know where all the information is in one place, that'll be a huge difference. So with that, I'll just give it to Jennifer, let her tell you what efforts that they've got going.
Thank you, Armando. And I think everyone just pretty much opened up the segue for the discussion and what I'm about to present. So I'm just going to share my screen briefly with everyone, and we will get started. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so I think the biggest thing initially, and this is part of the discussion that we always hear, it's about being consistent and pretty much having a standard and a consistent framework with how we engage the public and how we obtain feedback from the public. So the first step, and this is something that I've already have a draft guide. So we developed a public engagement guide. It's in its draft stages. I haven't presented it to this group yet because the city administration, neither has the mayor, none of them have looked at it quite yet. But in essence, this plan will have a standard and consistent framework for staff and for members of the public to understand how we're going to be engaging them. It's going to outline different levels of engagement because not every project is going to require the same level of engagement. So it'll have different, it'll outline what that looks like and what levels of engagement or what activities you'll take under each level. Under this plan, we will assist staff with setting goals and timelines for engagement efforts. And we will provide documents and other tools for staff to have. And again, this will pretty much set expectations and that way everyone in terms of internally and externally will understand how we're going to engage the public. One of the things that we have been discussing as well is that at some point I'd like to have a training available, whether it's at City Smart or in person after we get back to some sort of normalcy, so that individuals can have an understanding of what that looks like. So of course, it's setting up that guide and that would be first and foremost. The second aspect of it, and I do have to say that when I
want to talk about,
I don't know, someone's not on mute.
but I told you about fasting and the red flags and overdue fasting. And
Frank
it's not
Zaremba.
a good thing for your body. Well, the same is true.
Frank Zaremba, whoever that is, please mute your phone. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. So when we are discussing community engagement, I do want to give a big kudos to communications because they've done a phenomenal job in communicating a lot of the work that's being done and communicating all the different initiatives of the city. So they've done a great job at doing that. And so when we talk about putting together a framework for a project, it's going to be a really diverse group or different departments that are going to come together. So that will be, of course, community engagement team. That will be the project managers of whatever project or whatever initiative we're trying to gain feedback or input. And of course, communications, because they'll be the ones assisting us with getting the word out and deciding what methods we want to take. So what you'll see over the next couple of slides, it's pretty much 2 pages of a worksheet, but I try to break it down so you had a clear understanding of what that would look like. So again, we would have those parties involved and we would have an initial meeting. And this will be at the initial stages before the project rolls out or the activity rolls out. And we would have an actual form that's developed that will have outline the project, who the project leads are. Is this project or initiative citywide initiative, or does it affect only specific districts? What is the purpose? What is the why? What are we trying to accomplish? What are the bottom line questions? Of course, we will also outline who the stakeholders are. At this meeting as well, we will assess what kind of level of engagement do we need? And what I've developed here, I've kind of tweaked the questions a little bit, but it's no different than some of the national standards of that are currently being utilized. But we'll take a look at, are we legally required to obtain input on this specific project? I could tell you that there is a lot of HCD projects where we are required to go out and obtain feedback from the community. So that's the first thing. I know planning department has a lot of legal requirements as well for public participation. We also want to determine what is what potential does the public have to influence this decision-making process? There are certain things that we're required to do by law where the public may not necessarily have as much of an input, but then there's other projects where they'll be able to really have a greater impact in the decisions that we make as a city. What resources do we have available to support public participation? That's, in essence, that's a big thing to consider, because we may want to, we may not necessarily have the resources at the time to do the level of engagement that we'd like. Also, it gauges the staff and our perception of what we think the public's interest would be. And if there's any potential conflicts or controversies that we see on this particular event. So we'll be assessing that, and then we'll determine what level of engagement we will do. And that will be outlined in the guide under level A. These are the types of engagement or the minimum activities that we'll conduct. Under level B, these are the different activities, and so forth and so on. And then we'll also be able to determine, are we the appropriate individuals who can carry out these efforts? Do we have the appropriate resources? Do we need to outsource certain components of it? One way that I could, one important issue that we were able to outsource or seek additional assistance from was during the census. We went out and we hired Cornerstone to assist us with these public engagement efforts. So this aspect of the worksheet will outline that specific impact. Then we're going to take a look at, what engagement techniques and strategies do we want to take on? And one of it would be for sharing information. So how do we share with the public when the meetings are happening or the overview of the project? How are we going to do that? Then how are we going to compile information? Are we going to be doing, comment forms? Are we going to be doing polling? Are we going to be doing surveys? This will pretty much be checking off for this specific activity, which techniques are we going to employ? Also techniques to bring people together. Are we going to have open space meetings? Obviously, in light of COVID, we're probably going to be shifting more to doing Zoom meetings or more face-to-face in terms of maybe a small group of people. So we'll have different strategies that we can employ. And if you look at the this section of the worksheet, it outlines which activities obviously may be conducted virtually or may not require face-to-face interactions. So again, we'll be able to assess that collectively as a group.
Jennifer,
yes.
Before you move on, who actually is completing this worksheet?
So this will be the community engagement staff, and we will be sitting down in our initial meeting with the project managers and with communications. So it'll be in essence, three departments that are going to look at it.
Okay.
To determine, how we'll move forward. And I do want to say that with all of these, and we'll talk a little bit more about other documents, it's really going to be a joint effort, but the brunt of the work will be handled by community engagement. Of course, we need the project managers to gain information on what it is that they're going to bring forward. Of course, we're going to need communications because they're the experts on, how we communicate with and facilitate these discussions with the public, but it'll be an approach where all of these parties are involved. The next aspect of the planning sheet will outline timelines. Obviously, you want to work backwards. So we'll have a timeline of, what engagement techniques we're going to follow. So on this day, we're going to have, an introduction of letting the public know, this is a project that we're potentially bringing forward. Here's the why. On such and such day, we're going to put out a poll. So it'll just have a timeline of events. And this is specifically just for community engagement events, not necessarily for project schedules or any other things that the project managers may be working on. This form also has a section for notes, and then it outlines specific next step or action items and when we will have our next meeting. So it's just a way for us to stay organized and develop a strategy that on the specific project or initiative that we're trying to gain input on.
And Jennifer, before you move on, define for us what your understanding of engagement is.
Well,
What is
Mayor,
the task? What are you trying to accomplish when you say community engagement?
Well, I think it really depends on the project. I think it depends on what we're trying to seek engagement from. So that's the first level of discussion that we are going to have. And there may be a situation where we need assistance in, designing a building, or we may seek input on here, for example, our con plan and our action plan. This is HCD's required documents. We'll present the data to the community on what the community needs are, and then we want to gain feedback from them on what activities are important to you. Do you foresee that we need more funding for homeless services, or do you think that we need more funding for, home repair assistance? It just, Mayor, it really depends on the specific task at hand. That's why we have to review these individually, and it's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Very good. Thank you.
Excellent. So after that's done, obviously we'll start undertaking our community engagement and public feedback strategies. We'll obtain input, we'll analyze the data that's provided, we'll go and pretty much take a look at how does the community feel, and how does the city, what is our stance moving forward in this particular project. So this is through this, through this process, this is just obtaining and analyzing the data. So after we've done that, the goal of our department and our division is to really provide the commission, members of the public, the mayor and city administration on all of the, pretty much provide a report that outlines all of our efforts for community engagement. It'll have an introduction and a project overview. It'll detail the engagement activities that we've undertaken. It'll tell you, how many individuals participated in what meetings, or what the results of specific polls could have been. We'll provide actual transcripts of the public comments or feedback that we've received. We may even have a section where we'll clarify, there may be instances where we'll have individuals, indicate something that may not necessarily be accurate. So we'll be able to clarify that. So there'll be a section for all of that. And then we'll have exhibits. If there's meeting minutes that need to be included, if there's transcripts or links to specific meetings for people can watch it. If there is letters of support from specific neighborhood associations or from residents, you commissioners and the public and the mayor, you will have a package so you can have a full understanding of what engagement efforts we undertook and what the outcome of those efforts were. And then there'll be a section of where staff will provide the recommendations. And there will be times where, we'll kind of meet halfway in terms of what the public would like to see. There'll be times where, we'll have to make a decision of what the best outcome is for the city in terms of moving forward with specific projects. And again, I gave you a draft table of content and a draft forms, just so you can get an idea and really be able to visualize what that vision is, because it's hard to do that without seeing some visuals. Of course, the report will vary depending on activity, but we will have samples to provide to staff. And again, this is something that our community engagement team, in essence, will be taking, the vast majority, will be completing all of these documents, but we will be working with the departments to gather all of the data. So what's really next for us? Of course, we have to finalize the public engagement guide. That's essential. And then we want to make sure that we also finalize the project report, any worksheets that we may have. At some point, sooner than later, we like to develop citywide training on this new framework, whether we do that through City Smart. And I'm sorry, Jose Luis, I'm kind of, putting him out there in terms of that. I'll be reaching out to his team to see if they can assist us with this. But it is, providing training so that we're all on the same page and so that we're consistent with what we put forward. And other things that I'm really considering, and I've had discussions with the mayor and with administration on, is really re-envisioning neighborhood association meetings and what that looks like. Updating and reimagining our community and contact lists. We've made some updates to our neighborhood associations list, but making sure that we have that those lists are updated so we know who we need to engage. And when I say community contact list, I also mean a stakeholder list. I also would like to further look at creating internal neighborhood contacts per neighborhood or commission district. So for example, if you reside in District 5, you will have an internal person in City Hall that will be your liaison. So if you have any problems with sewer, if you have any problems with paying your water bill, if you have any problems with the road issues on your street, you have one person at City Hall that you contact directly, as opposed to trying to figure out who to call, trying to figure out who to get in contact with. It'll be one specific individual, and I'm trying to figure out how we how we frame that. Maybe at some point, we may even want to establish or develop a neighborhood liaison or a neighborhood champions program. That's where we will take individuals who are really interested in learning more about the city, and we will provide training for them so they can learn about city operations, so that they're more involved in what's going on. And there are some frameworks in other parts of the country and other municipalities that I have looked at, but it's just a matter of formalizing that. And that's really what's coming up next. I do want to say, like Armando and the mayor stated, it's not an overnight process. It takes a little bit of time to build things, especially when you want them to be organized and just across the board. So I do ask for your patience. I know that I'm working with some departments on specific initiatives, engineering, but we really haven't gotten to a point where, from the beginning, we all come to the table. So that's really what the next step is, so that there's a triage approach between the project managers, between community engagement group, and of course, communications. So that's really the gist of my presentation. And if anyone has any questions and/or feedback, I'd love to hear from everyone, from the commissioners, from my colleagues, of course, from Mayor, if there's anything that you'd like for us to further explore, or any comments or feedback as it relates to what's being proposed.
Thank you, Jennifer, for that presentation. One of the things I do like is having a document that will be prepared post any community engagement that we can refer back to, and it captures the results of the community engagement efforts. So that's certainly something I like. We do have some comments and questions from commissioners, beginning with Commissioner Fox.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. This was fantastic. I'm really looking forward to this new program. And I guess I have a question and a comment. The question is basically, which projects, how do you determine which projects will have community outreach? I mean, I know that there's so many different projects going on at any given time, and we only have so many people in your department. So is there a way that you're prioritizing which projects will have some kind of outreach? And then my comment is just that I would love to be, if possible, when you start organizing these, just to let the commissioners know. I received an email from someone in the Historic Northwest about a project going on, a meeting that's going on Wednesday, and I didn't know anything about it. So, I just want to always be able to attend if I can, and just to be able to also learn about the projects myself.
Right. In an ideal world, the majority of projects, or if not all projects, will have some sort of level of community engagement. Now, what that level is, again, it depends after we determine what the level of engagement would be, but there should be some community engagement. So whether you're just informing the public that this project is happening, or whether you're seeking additional, feedback on specific, nuances of the project, I think all projects to some extent should have community engagement. And we're not there yet. Obviously, with COVID-19 coming and all the changes that we've had as a result of that, I'm working to shift priorities at some point, so that we do have the right resources to do this on a citywide basis for all projects. But again, I don't know if this answers your questions, but I think we should have some sort of level of community engagement for all the projects that we're undertaking.
Okay, thank you. Madam President.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Jennifer and Armando for diving into this topic. And it's good to see the organization that's around it. I wanted to ask about kind of a variation on the theme that you've started. I think it's really great to have that a la carte menu of items that would involve community engagement. But I think what is key in this is the consistency and the expectation level. So if, just like when we have reviews for site plans, there's a level 1, level 2, level 3, if we could come up with some kind of system for, this is a level 3 community engagement, and then I, as a neighborhood resident, know that means, a month before there's going to be a complete public meeting, then I expect to have a letter in my water bill, or whatever that package of community engagement looks like. Then it allows just for a little bit more of a consistency. And I think for us as commissioners to say, this is a level 3 engagement, you should expect to have a meeting. We're a month away from this, or we're 2 weeks away. That means there should have already been 1 or 2 meetings, or you should have received, whatever level of communication is required for that specific project. And then I think that gives us something that we can package out to private, private parties, developers, anyone starting an initiative outside of city initiated resolutions, et cetera, to say, here's the framework that the neighborhood anticipates. And it just allows for a little more consistency. So I think it's a great track that you've started down. If we could maybe tweak that a little bit to get those into packages, understanding that, it might be a level 3 with an additional meeting, but if at its very base, we could have that expectation level, I think that would be helpful for me as a commissioner. Thank you.
Yes, so Commissioner, so we already started developing that. That's in the actual guide, and the guide will have level A, B, and C. And based on whether the project is A, B, or C, here are the specific minimum levels of engagement that we'll engage. Now, if we go above and beyond, it may be because we expect for this particular project to have some sort of resistance, or we really need to take a deeper dive at educating the public on what's being proposed. So once that guide is finalized and that is shared with you, that information will be on there. But I absolutely agree with you. We have to have that.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Lambert.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jennifer and Armando, for the presentation. I agree. This is very exciting. I had a similar question about the A, B, and C and the setting expectations. I love the reports, and I heard you say that the commission staff will get these, but how will residents also know whether the project, excuse me, is an A, B, or C, or what things are happening? And I don't know if you have that answer now, or just that if that could be considered. One other thing that you mentioned was that whether or not it would be the city's responsibility to do the outreach or some other entity that maybe we're working with. And I can think of one most recently that we had, which was FPL with undergrounding some transformers. And it came to light that that was really FPL's responsibility to make sure that they did those community outreach. But I think that, having some level of expectation that either we ask them what did they do for their outreach, or that we let residents know, hey, if you want to be informed on this, we just letting you know FPL is doing this project, reach out to them directly, just making sure that we're taking that into consideration. Also, I think it's very exciting that the community engagement department will be the hub, but I just want to make sure that there's something in place so that as these projects come up, that everybody knows at what point they need to involve your department, so that there isn't just, oh, I forgot that you all need to be at the table as well. The training, I think, is a great idea. Just my recommendation or request would be that in that training for the staff, that we have discussion on vernacular. I know that was brought up at a recent commission meeting, just that we use certain acronyms, but that the general public doesn't always know that. Talk about the agenda planning and about how maybe leading with the why instead of leading with, oh, this is the projects that we're doing, but really talking about the vision behind the project. And then one question I had about the reimagining the neighborhood meetings and the neighborhood association meetings, I just wanted to clarify, did you mean the neighborhood meetings that the mayor has either monthly or quarterly?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
super.
Yes.
And then my final comment was just about, I forget what you called it, like a neighborhood liaison or something like that. I remember a few years ago, there was some discussion about some sort of way to give a glimpse of what the inner workings of West Palm Beach is like. I know that with Leadership West Palm Beach, there's a day that they, learn about city and how it works. And I don't know if there's a way to give a glimpse to our residents. I can tell you, I talk to residents and sometimes they don't know the difference between the Public Works Department and the Engineering Department, or what the mayor's office oversees versus, another office, and just some sort of informational whether it's a 2-hour day that they attend, or maybe it's just a 20-minute video. But this is all really exciting. And Mayor, I'd just like to say thank you so much for directing staff on this. I think it's really important and helps us all to make sure things get done in our city. So thank you.
Yes, and on that latter point, one of the things that I have been working with my neighborhood's first liaison is putting together a citizens academy whereby we would have citizens sign up, and they could have over a period of time, whether it's a day or an hour over several weeks, to get that kind of education. So we are, we obviously got tied up with the budget, but I want to revisit that issue and see if we can organize some type of citizens academy. I think it would be good, to get people educated on what we're doing. And then frankly, I see those graduates of the academy as being a good pool of potential volunteers to help us with city projects, and also to help us get the word out to their various communities. So we're working on that as well. Any other questions, comments?
Mayor, if I may address one thing.
Absolutely.
And that is, and we've talked about, this is definitely a long-term goal of yours, Mayor, and something that I've talked about several times that I want to reiterate, just making sure that we do outreach and provide a voice to those who normally don't have a voice. And we need to make sure that's not the same 4 or 5 people who speak up at every meeting and at every community engagement effort, and that we give an opportunity to those who are working families, maybe folks whose English is a second language, make sure that they're part of the engagement effort and they have a voice in the city too, because we've been missing that.
Thank you. And Armando, can you also speak to some of the different technologies that you and Jennifer want to use to gather opinions from the community? I know you're experimenting with some different things.
Sure. As I mentioned, we've learned a lot in the last few months. Certainly Zoom has an opportunity. We just recently did an 8111 outreach for that property where we use Facebook Live and Zoom, and we're able to gather data information from folks there. We have a poll opportunity or survey opportunity with a technology that we purchased that allows for us to easily survey external and internal customers. We've done both. We did the golf course. We tried it out and it worked really well. We've done a couple of internal surveys. So we've got a number of platforms that we can deploy technology-wise that'll help us gather some of this data, and we can do so in multiple languages. So that's one way that we'll be able to reach out to some of the folks who we normally didn't reach out to.
Thank you. And commissioners, as was stated, this is a work in process. So if you have any suggestions, ideas, other than those you've expressed this morning, please reach out to Mr. Fana or Ms. Ferrio and share that with her. But stay tuned. We'll be getting back to you as this further evolves.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mayor, I had just a question about that technology, if you don't mind.
Oh, yes, sure. I do see that.
Thank you. Armando, is there a way for us to do this, or maybe we already started doing this, which is collecting the contact information of the stakeholders who we've been reaching out to on those topics, so that in the future, if something changes on the golf course, we know we've got a select group of people who are super engaged and want to know about the golf course, that we can rely on this list to be able to communicate with them?
Yes, a couple ways. One is when we send a survey out, the actual person who's filling it out has the opportunity to sign up for any future survey efforts that the city sends out. So they'll get any and all of them that they want. And the second thing is when we did, for example, the Zoom and Facebook Live, we do get the email addresses of those who are submitting their questions, and we can keep a list that way. So, but yeah, and I'd also like to maybe set up a listserv of some kind where people can go in and just register as an individual that wants to get information. And I know folks get bombarded these days with email and spam, but if they want it, if they want to be part of the engagement process, they can just be on that listserv.
And I think that's important too, because I know that the mayor puts out a robust email every Sunday that has a lot of information, but we also get, a couple of times a week these press releases that are on specific topics that maybe there are residents or stakeholders who would like to get those because maybe they miss it in the lengthy, newsletter. But if they signed up and said, I'm specifically interested in traffic calming or some road closures or something like that, they could get that. So that's really great. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, I don't see any other questions or comments. So Jennifer, Armando, thank you both again for a very comprehensive presentation. All right, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to move item 2 to 2 weeks from today. So committee list, item 3, Madam President, do you want to assume the reins of leadership on this discussion?
Thank you, Mayor. I am going to share my screen so we can share the committee's list. This is something that's typically done a little earlier in the year. I think COVID got me a little thrown off on making sure everyone got signed up for committees. So what's being shared on your screen is the current list of boards and committees that commission either sits on as a voting member or is a liaison to. And so we have current commissioners that are assigned, but that doesn't mean that if someone wants to shift responsibilities, that is not an available option here. So I just wanted to go down through the boards and committees, commissioners, and gauge if there was any interest. So I'm just going to go down the list. As we start with art and public places, previously filled by Commissioner Riles. Is there any commissioner that would like to liaise with art and public places? I see Commissioner Fox's hand. So any other commissioners? All right, Commissioner Fox, you are down as that liaison. The second is the CRA Advisory Board. If it pleases this commission, I would like to retain that seat, as that is the advisory board to the Northwood Pleasant City CRA. Everyone's okay with that? Okay. The Criminal Justice Advisory Board, currently with Commissioner Peduzzi. Commissioner Peduzzi, interested in continuing? Any other commissioners interested?
Absolutely. I'd like to continue. I was actually on that board as the vice chair before I became a commissioner, so I'd like to continue unless someone else really feels strongly about it.
Looks like commission is okay with you continuing there, Commissioner Peduzzi. The Gulf Advisory Committee, currently occupied by Commissioner Lambert. Commissioner Lambert interested in continuing? Any other commissioners interested?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm interested in continuing on that, as well as the one below it, the Education Advisory Committee.
Any other commissioners interested in either one of those committees? All right, Commissioner Lambert, we will keep you on as those liaisons. The Library Advisory Board, they're interested in sitting on that board. Commissioner Fox, any other commissioners? Okay, Commissioner Fox, we will list you as that liaison. Parks and Recreation, Commissioner Nearing, interested in continuing? Other commissioners interested?
Yeah, I'm fine, but if someone else is interested, willing to exchange or think about something different.
Looks like everybody's good with you continuing, Commissioner.
Sounds good.
Anyone interested in Sustainability Committee? I will list myself down as Sustainability Committee, unless there's anyone who is interested. Sounds okay. Looking at the outside board and agencies, the Florida League of Cities, I've voted as our voting delegate this year on the Florida League of Cities, so I think that's the main obligation within that committee. If it pleases the commission, I'll just continue to do that on any other opportunities. Looking at the TPA, we have Commissioners Peduzzi and Nearing and Commissioner Lambert as alternate. Commissioners, would you like to continue in those capacities? Commissioner Fox, are you interested in being on this committee?
I'm happy to if someone wants to step down, but I'm
Well,
fine as it is too.
okay. I think I saw head nods from the 3 commissioners that currently sit, so we will keep it there. And if anything changes, Commissioner Fox will be sure to let you know on that. The National League of Cities, Commissioner Peduzzi, would you like to continue in that capacity?
I can, you know, I haven't done a whole heck of a lot with the National League of Cities. If there's someone who has a particular interest in that, I'd be happy to let them have it, or I can continue.
I think we'll have you continue on, Commissioner.
The major thing with that, and as well as the league, is that once they resume face-to-face meetings, which I presume will be at some point, they generally have a business session at that conference where the city needs to have a voting delegate. So just keep that in mind going forward.
Okay.
Thank you. Looking at the next 2 committees, which I think are related, the Northwest Salvation Army Advisory Committee and the NCCI. Is there Commissioner Fox? I think
I would like to be on those. I mean, they're in my district, so I think that would make the most sense unless someone else has interest.
agreed. I think that makes a lot of good sense. The Palm Beach County Criminal Justice Committee Reentry Task Force, Commissioner Peduzzi, interested in continuing. Other commissioners interested?
I'll continue unless someone else is interested.
We will list you as continuing. The Palm Beach County Early Childhood Cabinet, any commissioners interested? All right, commissioners, I'll leave that one. Oh, Commissioner Fox.
Can you tell me more about that, if you know?
I have never sat on that committee. Commissioners, if anyone has, please feel free.
I can speak to that. I believe, Commissioner Fox, that it is the Early Childhood Coalition. They get a number of nonprofit leaders, community leaders together and give a quarterly update, obtain information. I think it would be highly informational and great for us to have a seat at the table. And I'd personally love to do it. I just I want to be aware of my time constraints, but if we could have representation there, I think it would be great. Or we could probably get the minutes from it as well, if you don't have time either.
Okay, I'll take it and I'll make time for it. It sounds, I agree with you. I think we should have someone at the table for that. It sounds interesting.
Thank you, Commissioner Fox. Commissioner Lambert, are you interested in staying on the Palm Beach County League of Cities?
I am, yes. And as I'm a board member there, I do vote on items there as well. So thank you.
Okay. The Palm Beach County League of Cities Water Task Force, Commissioner, do you sit on that as well as a subset, or?
I don't, but I'd be happy to. I think we had a former commissioner who was on that before, so I'm happy to fill in there. Okay,
I'll list you down there. You can, report back to commission staff if that's still something relevant that we need to be listing.
Okay.
The Palm Beach County Tourist Development Council, if it pleases the commission, I would like to stay on in that capacity. Great. The Superintendent's Advisory Committee, Commissioner Lambert, interested in continuing on there.
I have not heard that they're having a meeting any time in the recent history. So do you think when you report this back to our commission staff that if they could check if the superintendent is still having those?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
The Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, Commissioner Peduzzi, interested in staying on. Other commissioners interested?
I'll stay on unless someone is interested in taking it.
We will keep you on. The West Palm Beach Housing Authority, Commissioner Nearing, interested in staying on. Other commissioners interested?
I would say if we're going to have a transition, this would be the time to have, as you know, a new executive director. That doesn't necessarily cover my district, but I think at the time, I've been on it, I think, since I started on the commission, just based on the need. So again, I don't know, is it Commissioner Fox or Show whose district? Well, I guess there are a couple of districts.
Yeah, I think it spans between my district and Commissioner Lambert's district down on the
Oh, is
south
it
end.
Lambert or Commissioner Lambert? Okay. So the bottom line is, I mean, I'd be willing to, but you know, if again, if there was to be a break, I think now would be the time. I haven't met the new executive director, but there's a new ED, and so this would be a good transition moment. And I'm aware, I think we're going to be doing this in another, I don't know, 3 or 4 months after the elections. We're going to be doing this again. So yeah, I'm willing to stay on, you know, or not.
Have they appointed a new executive director yet?
They have.
Who is it?
She's from out of state. I haven't met her yet. She's from out of state. Someone sent me her CV a couple days ago. I haven't reviewed it yet.
Well, Commissioner, I think probably given what you've said too, we're going to transition here in a couple of months. So we'll let you be the continuity on behalf of the city of West Palm Beach as that director transitions, and then we'll revisit and, you know, see what happens at that time, if that's good with the commission.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, Mayor, for allowing us this moment, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, item 4, Banyan Boulevard project update. Mr. Volbrecht.
Yes, good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm going to turn this over to our project manager on this. Vladimir Janot is going to provide the presentation for this, as well as other stakeholders that are involved in the project will help him out. So go ahead, Vladimir.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners and Mayor. Thank you very much for allowing us to do this update on the Banyan workshop project and on the Banyan project. And we have Alison. She's gonna lead us toward the introduction, and then we'll follow us as soon.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. Alison Justice, Deputy Director of the CRA. We're here today just to give you an update kind of on where we are on the Banyan Boulevard streetscape. I know everyone has probably seen the work going on out there. We'd like to kind of just give an update on where we are and where we are in the timeline of the project. So, Veronica, you can move on. I have somebody I think is running the slideshow here. Okay, here we go. So just to recap kind of where we started with this project, the project team, again, Vladimir Janot is the special project manager for the city. I've been the project manager from the CRA. Again, the CRA is funding this project through the 2019 series bonds that we issued. Our design team was WGI. We started this design back in 2017 with an RFQ that WGI won. They went through phase 1 of this project to look at a lot of different things, and then phase 2 started in 2017, 18 really, and now we are under construction. So Whiting Turner, our team from Whiting Turner is here, and Cooper Construction, Veronica Cooper, I think she's running our slideshow here. She is helping with our public outreach. So to give a project recap, this project started again, when we started discussing this back in 2016, it was a discussion with the engineering department that needed to repave the road. And you know, engineering has their assessments of the roadway conditions and when they're going to repave. That's where the discussion started with the CRA, also with the DDA, talking about, is there anything else that we need to do and address on Banyan if we're going to go under construction on Banyan Boulevard? Obviously for the CRA, our real concern was the connection to the Historic Northwest, making those connections easier. It's really, Banyan being as wide as it is really separates the neighborhood from downtown. Also, we wanted to address pedestrian access, shade. There was a bicycle mobility plan that the city had just completed that this was a major east-west corridor for bicycle traffic as well. So those are the types of items we wanted to address. If you want to go to the next. So as we started talking about the project, we looked at it in two phases. The phase one is under construction right now from Australian Avenue to Quadrille Boulevard, and began in May of 2020. This is an approximate 2-year duration, so it will be done approximately May of 2022. We are on schedule, and as the team works through the different phases of the projects, they'll kind of tell you, what we've come across in this phase, where we are on our timeline, and where we're going from here. So again, from Quadrille East will not occur until probably in late 2022 before we get that project started. Some of the planned improvements, again, we're addressing some pedestrian modes here. We created elevated bike lanes, traffic calming elements with some of the intersections, new lighting, ADA, and signalization. And again, some of these intersections, in particularly at Sapodilla and Rosemary, improving those connections was really important. Obviously, we have a treed median in here as well. So now I'm going to turn it over to Bo from Whiting Turner. He is going to go over some of the current conditions and what we're doing right now out on Banyan Boulevard.
Good morning. My name is Bo Huggins. I'm with Whiting Turner Contracting, and I'm the field superintendent for your Banyan Boulevard Streetscape project. And I want to talk to you about a couple of things, safety being one of them. Safety is a top priority out here, not only with our working members, but also with the motoring public and the walking and bicycling public. And we go to great extremes to make sure that we provide the best direction possible for people traveling in the area. And you see on the screen here some examples of the different types of MOT we have set up to separate the general public from our work zones. These are some water wall we use, water filled barriers. We use all kinds of different message boards to relay to people what's going on, along with barrels and cones, different things like that. So safety is a big part of what we do. We actually do a twice daily checklist where we drive the MOT, make sure it makes sense, make sure all the devices are in the proper order and place. And then we document that with photographs and a checklist. And we do that twice a day to minimize the impact on the general public. Here's an overall view of MOT. This is the Tamarind and Banyan intersection, and you can see we start with plans like these, design them, and plan it all out so it makes sense, and submit and get review and approval from all our teammates and trade partners to make sure we're keeping the roadway accessible, the walkways accessible, and everything safe. Another big challenge that we've had this year, along with everybody else, is COVID-19. Yes, and it's impacted construction. We are following CDC guidelines. All crews, when they show up in the morning, are health screened, and that's basically just a couple questions: are you healthy? You feeling good? And we also do temperature screening. So all crew members go through this every morning prior to starting work. And that is documented also. We keep a record of all that. The CDC guidelines, out here, we're outside, so it's a little different than being inside, but we still follow. We try to maintain our social distancing, wear face coverings, sanitize equipment, tools, and the like, just to minimize the chance of the spread of COVID. Some of the the work that's going on now. For the last 4.5 months, we basically have been doing underground utilities. You know, you've seen everything torn up. The work that's going on right now is all the new underground utilities, which consists of a lot of new storm drainage, because that Banyan corridor tends to have some issues when we get a lot of rain, along with new water main to update the domestic water supply. And there's some sanitary sewer replacement going on too. So that's what we've been working on. You can see a picture here. On the left is new water main installation going on, starting at Sappadilla, heading west to Tamron. And that's going to go on for about another month. But we're pretty close to on the south side, which is the major portion of underground utilities for this project. We're probably approaching 75% of that work being completed and installed. And here's just an aerial view looking down at Banyan right over Australian Avenue. And you can see how like we always planned, we have the south side closed, the lane closed down. We're still maintaining 4 lanes of traffic. For the most part, we do have some a section of a lane closure where we're doing a water main right now. And you can kind of see the work, how it's progressing, moving east.
Thank you, Bo. So we'll be speaking on some communication effort that we've been doing throughout this project. So first of all, we'll talk about—
Vladimir, before you continue, can we go back to Mr. Huggins, please? A couple of questions. You still there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you. It looks like you're right on the site now, so I appreciate your taking time.
I'm out here.
I'm sure it's a very busy schedule. Couple of questions. You know, we're in the midst of hurricane season now, so how difficult is it for you guys to batten down the hatches if we have a storm headed our way? You got a lot of heavy equipment and stuff out there. What do you guys have to do to batten down the hatches?
Well, basically, we have a plan, and it consists of, once we go into to the watch portion, we're starting to take down our MOT. Any open holes or trenches, everything gets backfilled, safed off. All the storm drain protection is removed to keep the water flowing if we do get a large amount of water. You know, the equipment is either moved off site or it is stabilized to where it's not going to impact anything. It's big, heavy equipment out here. So it would take a lot to mess with that. We actually went through this drill during the, and I won't say it right, the ISIS potential hurricane, where we completely removed all the MOT devices and did just basically everything I said. And it took us about a day. And then it took about another day after the threat had passed to put it all back together again.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir, very much. This question is more for Kevin. As I saw those streets opened up, do we have an opportunity to lay any kind of fiber optic cable along Banyan? Is that part of the planning at all?
I mean, we do have that opportunity. I think, Vladimir, why don't you answer that question, because you're probably more familiar with that type of a scope. I'm not so sure that we actually included that in this scope of this work, but Vladimir, could you go ahead and answer that, please?
Yes, Mayor, we've been working with IT with the existing conduit that they have on Banyan. There hasn't been any discussion on new conduit as of yet, but if there is, we can certainly incorporate that in the project.
All right, can someone check into that? You know, it'd be a shame if we have the opportunity, if we didn't take advantage of it, please. Yeah. I don't know who makes that decision, but if they could take a look at that and see if we have that opportunity, we could take advantage of that opportunity.
Okay. Yeah, we'll look into that for sure. And if there is a necessity there, like Vladimir said, we can try to accommodate that quickly within the budget that we have for the project. So
Yeah, with that street running so close to the historic Northwest, there may be a chance to help cross that digital divide that we often hear about. Okay, if somebody can get back to me and let me know. Okay, Vladimir, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. Ms. Veronica, if you can share your screen again, please. Okay, so we'll talk about the communications, both internal and external, which is a major piece of this Banyan project. And so first thing you see, this is pre-COVID. We had a meeting with the fire chief and talked about Banyan in its entirety and how we can communicate to make sure that it's just, they can get to their destination as quickly as possible without us impeding them. So we have a main of communication. Not only we talked to the chief, to the fire chief, but also we spoke with the police department, and we have ongoing effort to continue to keep them up to date as to what's going on and maintaining access to their facility. And also, as we know, there is a lot of changing part or moving parts within the Banyan project. So we go to this thorough effort of communication, producing flyers to make sure that everyone is aware. Recently, we just had a shutdown of Cameron intersection south. There was another ongoing project. So we make sure that we coordinate those aspects together to make sure that our direction that we're giving to the motoring public is clear and succinct. And also, we have a road closure committee that we meet bi-monthly that we communicate those upcoming changes to make sure that all the businesses downtown and any users that are coming down know of these closures to minimize the impact on them. So, and also, we know that the green market is coming up. We make sure to coordinate that with a city staff event so that deliveries and things like that can go smoothly. And now, Veronica will talk about our external portion of the communication.
Thank you, Vladimir. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Again, Veronica Cooper, representing the public outreach component of the project. Since our last presentation before you, we've maintained a consistent communication with stakeholders in the community. And our last face-to-face meeting pre-COVID was held on March 12th with 101 Lost Condominium. Then due to COVID pandemic, which necessitated social distancing, we transitioned to virtual meetings with stakeholders listed below. So these are previously held virtual meetings. And I wanted to also point out that we have a scheduled upcoming meeting for October 6th. We've also maintained a rigorous in-field communication and coordination with the transportation agencies that are listed here to mitigate any disruption to their operations as well as the ridership experience. And I'd like to acknowledge our field representative, Victor, who goes door to door at times, sometimes on a weekly basis, handing out flyers and providing information to the many users on Banyan Boulevard as the field activities progress. This slide represents the material that we distribute both in print and electronically. You'll note here that this is the pedestrian access route. Once we transition to south of Banyan, working on the sidewalks, we put out this notice advising pedestrians of alternative routes to avoid the area between Cameron and Sapodilla. We've also, since 2019, maintained a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week project information hotline. This number here, anyone can call, and we will respond to any questions or concerns that the community might have. Up next will be Matt Young to talk about project accomplishments.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Just to give a quick update here on accomplishments. To date, as Bo had mentioned previously, we've successfully completed approximately 75 to 80% of the underground infrastructure on the south side of Banyan. This is the major thoroughfare for the infrastructure. So that includes water, sewer, drainage, etc. During this period, the COVID period, and the lower traffic volume that we've experienced, we've actually maximized some of these closures and crossings by putting in infrastructure across Banyan in a north-south direction, which would also help us with the installations when we get to future phases. This combined document here that we're looking at, it shows deteriorated drainage pipe. And these are some of the conditions that we experienced when we did our soft digs or utility avoidance program. Some of these conditions, they were unforeseen. However, with the team effort, with the design team, the city, etc., we were able to maximize our efforts and have these areas replaced at the city's directive. So on the right, it also shows a water main, an existing water main, extremely deteriorated condition as well. Next, please. So here we have some new RCP, the drainage pipe being installed. As shown here, we're also complying with all the COVID requirements, with face masks, etc. Next. These are also other slides showing inspections of the existing pipe on the left to make sure that whatever is buried will be maintained over the next 10, 20, possibly many other years. In the center, that photo shows existing utilities being replaced as well. One thing we wanted to point out is the safe conditions, utilizing our trench box system, etc. To the right, those stub ups, those green pipes are showing the rain garden drainage system that we've installed from Australia and all the way to Tamron as of this point. So these are just progressions showing what's been completed to date.
How old are those pipes that you showed us earlier?
We've been informed that, the water main, for example, in this general area is in excess of 20 to 30 years, and in some situations, even older than that.
Wow, okay. Thank you.
Yep. So this particular slide, shows the Tamron-Banyan intersection. And under the original game plan, this intersection would have been shut down multiple times due to phasing constraints, etc. We were able to knock this intersection out in one weekend due to the low traffic volumes, etc. And as of this point, we're approximately 70% completed. All the infrastructure is in, the paving is done. We just have some superficial curbs, sidewalks, striping, and some pavers to be installed. So this is a huge accomplishment for us that, during the COVID period, we took advantage of, the low traffic volumes. Again, this is another example of a water main tie-in that would have taken multiple shutdowns, multiple days because of the phasing in the original plan, just to make sure traffic was running smoothly. And again, we actually took advantage of the low traffic volumes. We had this installation completed in one night and reopened pretty much the following day. So this is a photo showing the crews working at night there on the project. This is a quick snippet of some of the conditions we've experienced so far. And as we previously mentioned, and Bo also mentioned, once we started excavating, there were unknown conditions beneath grade that, none of us were aware of. And with the combined efforts with the engineer, the city team, et cetera, although this entire process, from beginning to end took in excess of 30 working days, we were able to minimize that impact significantly. In terms of job fairs, we've had one so far, and this is pretty much in place to facilitate the hiring of local workforce candidates. We had a pretty good turnout at the last event. We intend to have a few more of those before the project is completed. And we do have some subcontractors that are currently onboarding that have made commitments to meet these requirements. Last, we want to thank you, and I think we'll turn it back over to Vladimir for a questions and answers section.
Well, thank you very much, Tim, for this presentation, and thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for allowing us and to present this update. And now we'll take any question if there are any.
Thank you, Vladimir. So I know we took advantage of getting started on this earlier because of COVID, reduced traffic. Have we achieved any significant acceleration in the work schedule?
Mayor, as Matt went over, we tried, we were delayed by underground unforeseen conditions. But the good thing is that despite those delays, we currently maintain the current schedule that we have. So though there were not acceleration, but still there were some good progress that we can count because we are not delayed. The project is still on track, on schedule.
So we avoided delays then that we might have otherwise encountered?
Correct, yes.
All right, very good. I do have a question from Commissioner Lambert.
Thank you. Thank you for the thorough presentation. You all actually answered a lot of my questions as well. And I appreciate the last slide about the local hires. I don't recall what the requirements were for this contract. And so are those local hires that you reported meeting those requirements?
Excuse me, Matt, do you want to talk about that, please? Answer that question.
Yes, Commissioner, as of this point, it's an ongoing process, and we are at this point meeting the requirement for meeting the local workforce requirement. However, we currently have one subcontractor on board that is currently hiring local participants. We do have another 3 or 4 that's scheduled to be onboarded within the next week or a couple of months, depending on the scope of work that we're talking about here.
Great, thank you. I have another question, Mayor, too, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you for the information on the community outreach. It sounds really great, especially on the heels of the presentation we just had by staff. I was curious as to have you heard any consistent themes of feedback from those stakeholders or through the 24-hour hotline?
Thank you, Commissioner, for that question. In general, we've received favorable feedback, although understandably there's been some concern for impact for the traffic as well as on the merchants and some of the other ongoing projects that might exacerbate that. With regards to the toll-free hotline, interestingly, the majority of our calls when we first started construction were not related to this specific project. It was more for any project that a resident or a driver might have encountered and saw the 800 number and called to inquire about. And then a lot of our calls are also come up once we hand out the flyers and they're seeking additional information that is specific to their location.
Ms. Cooper, while we have you heard anything from the county? I know when we first wrote out the schedule, they were resistant, wanted us to work, at night only, et cetera. Have they expressed additional concerns, reservations about what's going on here?
Our last discussion, Mayor, was last Friday with the county representative. Both Vladimir and myself were on that call. And at this time, they're just awaiting our October 6th meeting that we're presenting to the various users, and then they could provide any feedback or obtain any additional information from the project team at that time with regards to schedule and impacts.
Okay, thank you.
And also, Mayor, if I can add that we've maintained communication with them, providing them with all the update that is ongoing, and also we've worked with many of the department like traffic, engineering, and things like that to to keep them up to breath. So there is one other item that is pending is that we have our Miss Nancy Urchek is working on it, worked on it for us, reviewed some agreement that we needed to work with the county on, but since we sent that request to update our current traffic agreement. So, that could be a contention point with them, but as of right now, things are moving forward. We haven't heard anything as far as negative on the project.
Very good, thank you. Commissioners, any other questions, comments? Well, hearing and seeing none, Vladimir and team, thank you guys so much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for all of your tremendous information, and let's hope we continue to make progress on this very important project for the city. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners.
I don't have anything under Mayor's Matters. Commissioners, do you all have anything for the good of the body? Commissioner Fox?
Thank you, Mayor. So last week when we had our budget meeting, we discussed possibly having another meeting to move forward some of the items that we still have questions about. I just wanted to, while we're all on this call, talk about that, whether there will be another meeting. I was very reluctant to vote for that budget. There was obviously a lot of work that went into it, and I'm so appreciative that we found ways to reassign people and make sure that no one's jobs were lost. But I'm also afraid that we have this major component in the public safety union decisions that, that's going to completely change the outcome. I don't want to be pitting the public safety unions against our city staff because there's a false sense of security of what things are going to look like in the future. So I appreciate that the city administrator sent us a budget that would be, she gave us a couple of options about what it might look like based on, I believe, the agreements that we proposed, but that those were turned down. So I would also like to just have some understanding of, for example, if these union agreements come back to us to vote, I'm only one vote, but I would be voting to be more aligned with what they're asking for. I think it's very fair. I think they're not asking for raises, they're asking for a lifeline because, the police department can't even find people that want the jobs. The fire department is losing people to cities where they would have to completely start over, but knowing within a couple of years they'll be making a lot more money than they have the opportunity to here. So for me, I'm nervous. I think once we lose the public, if people are not feeling safe to come to our city, it won't matter if our library is open. It won't matter, which restaurants have been able to weather the storm from COVID, because if people don't feel safe, then none of those things are going to matter. So, that's just where I stand. And I would like to have a better understanding of what what the budget would look like, what our proposals would be, when those union contracts are negotiated.
You've done a very good job of reciting what I guess the union talking points are. Ms. Rothenberg, can you repeat again what the process is with respect to the union contracts, and now that we've declared an impasse, what steps happen now? You're muted.
Where we are currently is we are in the process of selecting the special magistrate who's going to review all of the issues that were identified by the parties as being issues that have not been able to be resolved. They will take testimony, hear both sides, and then make recommendations at a public hearing. At this point, we haven't yet selected the special magistrate. That process should be completed by September the 28th. After the magistrate goes through and makes recommendations, then the parties have time to look at those recommendations. And if they object to some of the recommendations, they have a specific period of time. I'm going to go from memory. I believe it was 20 days, or it's either 10 or 20 days within which to object to those recommendations. Then those objections would come to you as a body that you would then hear from both sides and make a decision at that time, not prior to that time, as to what should or shouldn't be imposed as it relates to the contracted terms. Following the time that a contract is entered into, either voluntarily or involuntarily, depending on how the process pans out, then the commission would meet again as a body to make whatever amendments are necessary to the budget to be able to fund those items that are included in the new contract that's been fully negotiated and decided on by the body.
So we don't have a proposal yet that we could even begin to strategize on how we would fund, right? We are now waiting to have the hearing in front of the magistrate. We'll set our case out. The unions will set their case out. The magistrate will make a decision. Then it will come back to the commission, and we'll have some decisions to make. There's nothing we can do now.
From both sides.
All right, there's nothing we can do now that would help us move that ball along, or where we could strategize as to how many layoffs, how many furloughs, what do we, because there's no proposal to fund at this point. Is that correct?
There is not.
All right, so as I've stated before, that process will have to play out. And commissioners, you will be fully engaged as we strategize on how to fund whatever the resolution of those negotiations are at the appropriate time. But there's nothing we could do now because we don't know what that number is. So once we know the number, based upon the magistrate's recommendations, that will come to you. Administration will present to you a plan for amending the budget in light of whatever that number is. Commissioner Peduzzi, you had a comment.
Thank you, Mayor. And I understand the process and the official formalities that we have to go through. But I would just hope that the door of communication remains open, because I think that we discussed this before. We're not precluded from still engaging in discussions with these unions. And the sooner we start that dialogue or continue the dialogue, I understand that you've already started it, continue that dialogue towards some sort of common ground, a midpoint, I think the better off we are. And as I suggested before, it's going to be tough, meeting that market, adjustment in 1 year. And as I suggested before, maybe we look at a multi-year adjustment where it's not loaded in the front end, but loaded over 3 years. And we can incrementally adjust it every year until they're at the market rate. That has always been my suggestion, and I just hope someone's hearing me somewhere, because I think that's probably the best chance that we're going to have of coming to some sort of agreement, since we're in a tough time right now.
And Commissioner, I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your suggestion. And as I mentioned on last week, when you said keeping the lines of communication open, I said my door is always open. Again, the way the conversation has gone, they presented their list of items. We countered, and you commissioners have been advised. And so now the ball is in their court. If they want to have a conversation, feel free to call me or city administrator and tell me if you want to modify your original request. Because when we presented the counter, they did not want to modify it, which is fine. That's their prerogative. But that is not showing movement toward the center as you suggested. And again, the proposal that was presented has always been that we are dealing with this on a one-year basis. We'll do what we can this year, and it's certainly our intent, our hope that we could move the ball even closer to something. We could do something else for market adjustment in year 2 and in year 3. But we have to see what the world looks like in years 2 and in years 3. So my door's open if they want to come back with a modified request. Commissioner Neer.
Thank you. Obviously don't get an opportunity to have this conversation because of sunshine. So I think that's why it's important. I just wanted my fellow commissioners kind of hear my thoughts on it. One is, doesn't matter how we got there, but in the 12th hour, we got from the general fund operating budget to a request that I know I had made and I thought I heard coming from the commission, which was additional options, including trying not to or not eliminating positions as a first option. And ultimately we got there. Once the city administration went to impasse, my approach has been, as a commissioner, I will wait until it comes to me as a commissioner. I mean, I appreciate the comments, and I'm not saying they're wrong comments, but I just think this process it's been right in front of us. And so I'm not sure what we would be expecting other than, which will be new for me and new for the city. I think I don't know the history of impasses, but so this is uncharted territory, at least it is for me. But my stance, or not stance, but my approach is one, it's obviously going to continue to be major pain points, but there really is nothing to react to, or as a commissioner, nothing that we can force. And again, I'm Commissioner Fox, I want to be clear, this is nothing to do with your comment. I don't get to express this individually, so I just want to express it to the mayor and commissioners in a venue that's appropriate. And so, again, my approach has been one, to let it all play out. If we could wave a wand, if I could wave a wand, maybe it wouldn't happen that way, but those are the cards that were dealt, and and there's a process to it. And so my approach as 1/5 of the commission will just be to let it play itself out and make the decision when it comes to me as a commissioner.
Thank you for those comments. The city has undergone impasse procedures before. I know when I was on the commission, so it might have been in 2012. So all I can say is that the sky is not going to fall. And as strongly as I feel about public safety and the importance of public safety to our city, I am confident, A, that we will get through this, and B, that we will continue to have strong public safety units in police and in fire, even if they don't get everything that they are trying to get. This is a negotiation, and I understand they may try to create a doomsday scenario that our city is somehow going to fall apart and deteriorate if they don't get their way. I can assure you that will not be the case. We're going to get a deal done. It may not be what everything they asked for, but we will get a deal done, and I'm confident in the integrity of the men and women in uniform, that they will honor the terms of that deal. All right, anything else? Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much. Stay safe.